Oh, we don't have a name for our podcast.
I know. I was thinking that.
We can come up with that later, I guess, right?
Yeah, we'll come up with it later.
So yeah, Matt, thanks so much for sitting down. This is our first attempt at a podcast, ladies and gentlemen, folks of the modern age. My name is Alexander Naiman. I think before we do intros, we'll just introduce ourselves and then kind of go into a little spiel about who we are, what we're doing.
Yeah. So, like Alex said, episode 0. My name's Matt. I classically trained in engineering, have been working in the climate tech and the AI sector for about 5 years now, and I'm about to go to Harvard Business School to pursue my MBA. Outside of professional stuff, I really enjoy outdoor activities, so hiking, skiing, biking, all of those things. And I right now have a special interest in AI, kind of how it works technically, but also what its impact is on for society and the general population. And I'm here with my good friend Alex. He shares similar interests. So, Alex, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Alex Naiman. The J is silent. Russian Polish family came to the States. I don't even know what I'm classically trained in. I grew up at the age of the start of coding, right? So very mathematical driven. That, of course, turned into my passion in physics. I went to university studying physics, and then about halfway through got really disenfranchised by this notion of axioms having to exist. It was like, no, I'm done with physics. Went and, as I think you know, went and studied philosophy, where I did my graduate work, focusing mainly on epistemology, phenomenology, consciousness, things like that. Then went later back and did some work in supersymmetry, WKB approximation, quantum field theory, that very absolutely terrifying field in physics. And yeah, while I was doing all that, I was a professor for 6.5 years of both philosophy and physics, often teaching at the intersection of both. And about 2014, I started the company. Um, I'd been a professor for a bunch of years, and I said, okay, education. It was already problematic at the time, to say the least. You sit in front of a classroom of 30 students, and you're lecturing and pouring your soul into it. 3 or 4 of them are really engaged, and the rest are on the phone or texting. After a bunch of years of that, I kind of committed myself to being like, I want to find the people who actually want to be involved in this. I want to find those few students you meet. And yeah, that's what I've been doing since. I work essentially, I do academic and educational, vocational consulting. I help people go to school. I help people figure out what they want to do, where they want to do it, and how to do it the best. And to return back to why we're here, similarly to you, my background has definitely made me hyper interested in what's going on in AI these days. Not just surely, and I think you and I have very different angles in the way that we're looking at it. I love doing local inference training and testing and creating local handlers to understand, see how the reasoning is working from an almost like meta epistemological place. Um, so that's me. And I think that Matt and I'll speak for us for a moment and I'll kick it back over to you. I think we wanted to host this podcast and to talk about things for a couple of different reasons. I think one of the big ones is how AI is being talked about versus what it is. There seems to be a bit of a disconnect there. I think that there's a further disconnect when it comes to the sale of products that include AI and what that actually means versus what people are actually getting. And of course, I think what we were talking about just beforehand, there's this really, I think it's nasty, a very binary polemic going on about AI right now. Either you're a full-on user and it's my life is automated now, or you're decrying that it's the end of the world. And I think that Matt and I both, we wanted to create this place to be scientists and to talk about objectivity, talk about the truth, and talk about what things can and can't do, and then go ahead and talk about the social ramifications, the social extensions of that. So yeah, I don't know. Stick around. We're gonna have some cool conversations.
Yeah, just to build on that a bit, this specific episode is going to be episode 0. So you won't be seeing that long-winded explanation of who we are. That'll be on our website, and we'll jump right into topics a little bit more quickly into the future. In the future, but what we're aiming to do here is have a dialogue, and it's an episode 0, kind of discussing what we want out of this podcast, what our values are going to be for it, what things we're going to search for and what we want, what we'll try to avoid, kind of those things, just setting the framework. But really what we're going to do with AI is we're going to have an unbiased view. We're not going to be taking in any outside money from AI sponsorships or anything like that. Have an unbiased, objective view, analyzing what's going on in society with AI, what's good about it, what's bad about it, because there are both sides of things, and just go back and forth. And Alex and I, it's really cool, our partnership, because we see eye to eye in a lot of things, but we also do have somewhat of different backgrounds, and we see things from different lenses through some of our disposition or maybe how we were raised. So we're not afraid to challenge each other in that light either. And we're going to be bringing in guest speakers each week when we go through different topics that can bring that expert voice to each area that we go through. And we're looking forward to having you, the audience, come along with us and learn and kind of grow and be part of this discussion and dialogue that we're going to have. And I will say, we don't have a podcast name yet, as this is episode 0. Maybe we'll get one by the end of the podcast, by the end of this episode, but also feel free to leave.
Please!
In the comments. We're not that creative, and we don't want to use AI for a name.
We're scientists. We don't do the creative thing.
Yeah.
And one other thing I was thinking of as you were saying that, which also might be really fun, not just for us, but for people watching and listening, is I've got the hardware and the knowledge to test a lot of what kind of is being discussed and talked about. So new models coming out claiming X, Y, and Z. Obviously, we have synthetic benchmarks promising the new latest and greatest. We can also test all of this stuff locally. I have 25090s in my machine. It's not that much, but 64 gigs of VRAM is a decent bit. So yeah, I think both from the social perspective, the technological perspective, the research perspective, I think that we've got a lot to look at and a lot to talk about. And this is going to be wild, man. I'm psyched.
And a lot to experiment with. Alex, I actually, now that I think about it, let's maybe discuss build out what our first 5 episodes could look like. What are the kind of 5 topics on your mind that you're most excited to dive into?
So 100% the biggest thing I want to talk about is the reality versus kind of the sales pitch of AI. And okay. I really would like, because mainly I think that this is such a big part of that binary kind of fight or flight response to AI, is that no one is actually objectively engaging with it, just being like, oh, this is what it is. And so I think really sitting down and talking about what a statistical aggregator is, talking about how transformer models work, talking about why they can do certain things very well, why they can and can't do other things very well. And just as you mentioned early on, I'd like to at least up front be hyper objective about laying the groundworks of how you and I and our future conversations are going to be talking about the limitations, the benefits, and the realities of artificial intelligence. To me, that at least is, even calling it artificial intelligence makes me, that to me would probably be something essential. I think that as an educator, I would love to do a whole episode on the use of AI in education. I know that I'm probably an odd one out, and we'll have a lot to talk about here, but I think that even laptops should not be allowed in classrooms. I'm pretty much a Luddite when it comes to academia. I'd also love to take a look at what's happening economically on a global scale in terms of how investments are changing, how the landscape of who controls and owns what is changing. Because, as I mentioned earlier, I do some vocational work with clients, and the job market is insane. I, for fun, the other day took a job interview, and my first screening was with a chat bot. And I did this because I had a client I was helping place, and they told me this, and I was like, no possible way that they're actually having people talk to agentic agents now. But yeah, it was cool. I got it to lie to me a bunch of times and be some cool stuff. But yeah, man, I think that the world is, whether we want to be naive, optimistic, pessimistic, it doesn't make a difference. There are major structural changes taking place right now. Mm-hmm. And we need someone being objective about them.
Yeah, I agree with those first 3. And I think probably the best first episode, in my opinion, would be doing a sales pitch versus reality, because that'll inform, I think that'd be like a good grounding for us to go back and forth and discuss where do we really sit today. And also, I think we should probably analyze what's possible. Like, where are the limitations going to be? Are they in the models? Are they going to be in how we can scale up compute? And if you start looking into space as a kind of a frontier that we can put data centers into, then our footprint we can build them out of has grown, and the energy we can get. So like, where will that constraint be? What is our limitation, and how intelligent can these things get? And then I think that'd be really fun, because once we understand that, we can go to the economic side and see this is how intelligent they can get. And then if they can get this intelligent, how does the economy value intelligence? And
That's honestly something I would almost even do an entire episode on in and of itself, is how does the modern economy value intelligence?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
just as a quick anecdote, not a lot of people know this. John Kerry was running for president. He was in France giving an interview. A reporter walked up to him and in French asked him a question. And despite the fact that Kerry was fluent in French, he turned to the reporter and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't speak French." And it was this monumental moment for kind of American facing politics, because it turned out that Americans didn't value intellectualism. And he had intentionally not responded in French to not alienate the American vote.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I kind of do think that in politics, short axioms can get you further than deeply logical arguments because it's too much to follow, especially
Of
in
course.
this world of snippets. But that example was a political one,
Mhm.
right? How does the general population value intelligence?
Mhm.
And that's just somewhat surface level. But the economy is a whole different story, right? Because that's literally trading something that you have that you can give for some sort of monetary value, which is money currently. And it seems right now that the economy does very much so value intelligence because all the quote unquote white collar jobs or the high paying jobs re- rely a lot on your cognitive abilities more so than physical. If you're going to do physical output for labor, that's pretty capped at a relatively low bar. So I would actually make the argument that the economy really does value intelligence. The general population and politically wise, they value, unfortunately, probably a lot of other things above that, such as you agreeing with them. But I'd say the
Yeah.
economy really does value intelligence right now.
Is it intelligence or is it efficiency, though? Because this is this one word that I'm always panicked by, is the word efficiency, because people use it when, no tangent yet. But so, responding to your point, so the other day I was working with a couple of clients, and they were talking about there's these offers like incubation tanks from Anthropic, from OpenAI, and some of the big companies where they'll go and they'll pay you essentially $1,000, $1,500 a week to go and do some research for them. But to me, at least as an outsider looking in, what it really looks like they're doing is they're hiring very smart people to extrapolate data. And so the question to me becomes, is it the intelligence they're seeking, or is it the data as the sheer output, as the sheer productive value? Because these people are working 2 month stints and then they go find something else to do, right? So,
Yeah.
well, I guess this actually, we could even go have a little kind of nuanced conversation about what intelligence actually is. But
Well, I think we should. I think we absolutely should have that because what is it? But I think to answer that point right there, I think that intelligence is the input. That's what you pay for. But everyone, when they any at least the way I view the way the economy works is people pay for an input because they want an output. So
yep.
they want the data, and the way to get that right now is through applied intelligence. It only come from humans at the current stage. So I would say intelligence is only valued because of what it can result in an output, which is more efficiency.
And I think that maybe what you just said is exactly my problem.
Okay.
Is that I think that, and this is my problem with education, this is my problem with a lot of modernity in general, my problem with a lot of the values of current society, is intelligence doesn't need to be valued for something. At least in my very humble Aristotelian view,
Yeah.
intelligence, at least to me, and this kind of goes back to what is intelligence earlier. And to me, intelligence is the ability to sit down in a room with people you've never met before, who have radically different perspectives than you do, to learn how to understand them and to synthesize some modicum of truth from the information that's contained within each of those voices. And that's something that I don't think it's very sellable. It's not efficient. It doesn't really, it's a lot harder to sell that than a good test score, to say the
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. It depends what lens we're looking through it, right? The economy will value intelligence for its output. A society would value intelligence for its cohesion, right?
Mhm.
Certain, like, a number of religions will value the individual for just they're innately valuable, things like that. So there's different realms, and I guess you can make the argument which, depending which lens you're looking through, there's different kind of definitions of what is how intelligence is valued.
Yeah, and I think that because we're dealing with artificial intelligence, it's again a little bit shifting that paradigm, because it's okay, you used to be really good at doing this, right? Let's do something easy: market comps, market research. It used to take me like a week to do a good write up in market research. Now it's 7 minutes with Claude,
Yeah.
right? And so that notion of a skill I once had is no longer a facet of my intelligence, right?
Yeah.
I.e., like actual task oriented, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this, I can do that. I think we have to slowly start moving away from this notion of intelligence. And
I
I don't know,
agree.
maybe towards more the Platonic idea of thought versus understanding versus belief versus opinion, and maintaining that understanding has a central role at the top, that ability to tell other people what you can do to teach others. Um,
That's I think that's actually that's we should put that down as another episode as well. Because what you're just saying is something that used to take you a week now takes 7 minutes with Claude. So once we have the episode of where we discuss what intelligence is, we come up with a definition there. You can essentially outsource intelligence to tokens and Claude. So then, as we know it, like maybe how we viewed it as valuable fundamentally changes. And so then, what is the new human value that we should be focusing on and trying to develop? And then this is for the audience. This is an interest of mine is development and improvement, self development, self growth, improvement.
mm.
And it always was safe working on reading and things like that. I'm still going to assume those are valuable, but where are the things we should grow if intelligence becomes something you can buy tokens of? Is it empathy? Is it understanding? How does it change? Like, Alex, I'll ask you, how should I be working on self growth? Where
I
should I be?
mean, I think, and I always, you've known me long enough to know that I'll
Mhm.
usually default back to Aristotle or Hegel or Rousseau or Kant. But I think that in terms of, let's rewind a little bit. So before, when I was saying I could do a market comp in 7 minutes with Claude now, I think what's critically important is that I could do it beforehand without. And the reason being is that we know, and obviously this will get better and more refined, but models like to make things up. They write false citations. They like to, and they're also somewhat sycophantic with things. Yes, this is the best thing I've ever seen. You're going to get funded. You're going to get $40 million easily. And so I think that, to answer your question a bit circuitously, understanding is really going to be the bedrock of everything now. If you can't understand why a model is giving you the results that it is, why it is, why it's decided to randomly hallucinate, why it decided to override your morality JSON file, why it's doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
If and when I say understanding, I mean it from a really very high level, not just knowing something, but the ability to genuinely sit down and teach it to anyone else with any limited access of experience. So I think the big things moving forward that socially are going to be critical is obviously understanding. And then, as you mentioned earlier, empathy, because I think that I'd also love to do later down the line, I think I'd love to do an episode about social decency, as I call it, and have in my more kind of philosophical circles referred to it as. But there's a lot of people who are arguing right now that globally we've reached kind of a moral low point in how we treat each other, just as human beings. Whether AI is increasing that or not, I'm really not sure. Whether it's social, whether it's political, I'm not really one to say, but I think it's something that most people can feel. Even walking around now, there's no more that, hey, how are you to strangers? It's heads down, everybody's on their phone doing X, Y, and Z. Um, and I think that, like, this very fundamental notion of human empathy, which requires, to go back to a point I made earlier, requires understanding different people and different perspectives and different notions other than your own, is going to be the only real individual and human defining characteristic.
Yeah.
Because if we're coding machines to care about efficiency, you know what doesn't care about efficiency? Understanding.
Now it's
They're
inefficient.
they're almost antithetical to one another, right? You just want a script you can press go and not worry about.
Yeah, and there's actually a duty that the AI laboratories are going to have to make sure that, like, one, we have to be able to understand it. Like, that's our duty, that's our job. But AI is going to have to chain a understand and spits out an answer. So to solve that problem, which I think is a very important one, Alex, I think there's kind of general understanding amongst the population, and then AI laboratories making sure that these models that they create to quote think out loud, so we have a chance to try to understand them.
One of the main reasons I love running things locally through a command prompt rather than through a GUI is simply because of that. I can expand the reasoning and literally watch it line by line going through what it's doing, and I can stop it and intervene and queue up a secondary analysis or something like that. But I think you're 100% correct, like genuinely 100% correct. That my issue then just becomes, do we trust the AI companies?
And then also, do we have an option?
That's the bit. I think I've talked to you about Alien Earth before, that TV show where we got the
Yeah.
six tech companies ruling the world. And yeah, it's becoming, this is again why I run local machines. I know they're not as strong as enterprise models. I need to understand what are the actual motivations behind these companies, because
Yeah.
it's, you have people coming out and saying, listen, we put enough compute in a room, we cure cancer, but cancer is not cured. You have people saying we put enough compute down in a room, world hunger, no longer a problem. Tuberculosis, still not dealt with. Let's deal with this. All of these things, but really what we're seeing is people integrating AI into software packages and selling them to corporate clients at massive prices. So that's one of the big reasons that I'm hesitant about all of this. Just as a kind of a general just worry of mine is that, because, and I think this could potentially be a completely different episode, but everything is off guardrails right now, right? We've got these companies that are operating completely autonomously against, literally, they're only operating for their own internal growth, whatever, however they qualify that. And the scary part to me is that everyone is just saying, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. And I think your sentiment is shared by the general population. You look at how many people are in favor of AI nowadays, and it's a very low percentage. It's very, AI is very unfavorable right now. So you're not alone. And
But that,
I think this warrants an entire episode, to be honest with you.
that's what I was saying. But I think that the important thing is, then I just want to be very clear about this, is I'm not against AI. Capacity, it is, and I'm going to use a platitude as old as time, it's a fucking tool.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what I was trying to mention earlier. Morally, when you unleash incredibly powerful tools on societies, you have to have some kind of, there has to be a projection of the good and the bad, right? And currently there's none of that. There's only this forecast of golden sunshine and rainbows every day as the market keeps artificially climbing. And that's what I'm worried about.
Well,
Is in a year or two, when all the free subscriptions are gone and we all have to pay for our tokens and local modeling is dead because someone undid it, like, where does that put us?
there's also a lot of so like on that. So I think, yeah, there's two paths we can go down, good and a bad. We should discuss both.
Hmm.
And but I actually would argue there's a lot of projections for the bad, because Anthropic uses the kind of doomer approach, saying that all jobs are going to be wiped out to try to sell hype. There was a blog post called Situational Awareness,
Hmm.
which kind of did a doomsday scenario
Oh, I think
2027.
you sent that to me. I think I read that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 2027 is also really good. It's also on YouTube, and it talks about what artificial generalized intelligence would look like if it happens. And there's a lot of work. It's just not coming out of the AI labs, but there's a lot of stuff you can read out there with the negative sides. And then for the positive sides, if you really want to do a positive side, I'd go to Ray Kurzweil, MIT professor.
Kurzweil's amazing. Yeah.
Imagine if we got him as a guest.
Wait, hold on. Who do I know at MIT right now? I could shake a lot of trees and make a lot of noise, but getting Kurzweil here, that would be something. Yeah, I think that I would also love to talk about this in great length from a scientific and a meta-epistemological approach, but I don't think that AGI is a reality until we get past language being the primary interface between us and machines.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
really, again,
What would an interface be? Because
I mean, it would have to be us essentially inputting in a natural language and a computer outputting binary.
how would we interpret the output?
We wouldn't have to. This would be well past that.
Oh, yeah.
I think the problem, and this has been around since Husserl, Wittgenstein, the great phenomenologists, but language in and of itself is hyper-subjective. There is no point at which a language can, in and of itself, be completely tokened. And
Yeah.
the more reasoning and the more reasoning and theory crafting we put into the model to work around the language, the more subjective bias we then have.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. Even as humans, we're probably subject to bias of the language that we know. Like our thoughts are shaped by the language that we speak, which
I
is
mean,
fascinating.
think about it. Someone says "what's up" the wrong way, and it sounds like an insult rather than a hello, right? And so we actively, there's no way to quantify this for a machine aside from context, right? We can open the context, but at the end of the day, we need to be working with zeros and ones. That's the only thing the universe gave us, was zeros and ones, and so that's all we get. But I see in terms of AGI, it would necessarily, to me, it would have to completely overcome the fundamental transformer model. It would have to be some kind of one-to-one input to output that is running in some theoretical framework that I don't really understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Because like even all of the main complaints about most of the agents right now are in regards to how hallucinations are based on language problems, right? Like this the sycophantism that we see in all of these models is it's a language issue. It's all these, it's the coders, the developers, the writers, the handlers telling it, if this is the word you have to do this, these are your ethical guidelines, these are your moral guidelines. And I'm going to say something that may be a little hot take-ish here, but like science doesn't have room for that shit. If I tell a machine that I need it to run 2.5 million scenarios of a various, supersymmetrical state, and it's like, hey, you're using water doing that, we have issues, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And part of the problem too with putting in ethical guidelines, which I think anyone would agree that good, virtuous ethical guidelines are beneficial. But the problem is who's creating these guidelines? What's the definition of ethical? And all these things. And so we'll dive deep into that, but it's at what point does it go from just quieting speech that people don't want to hear and more so censorship than actually being ethical guidelines? And maybe the better way to look at it is seek objective truth and have a reward function when you get closer to that. But then you still need guidelines because AI could over optimize for something that would result in a net bad for humanity. So I don't know how that'll be worked out. But I think that's absolutely a conversation that needs to be had. We should do an extended episode for that one.
I 100% agree because when you think about things like, okay, if we surpass language and we have machines that are interfacing at a machine language level, then you start getting into the questions of, okay, so what's our job,
Yeah.
right? Then you start
Yeah.
getting into this real kind of eerie questions of, so what are we doing with our time?
Well, on that point, so that's another episode I want to have is what are we going to do with our time? And what does, I guess there's the philosophical question of what is the ultimate goal of humanity? Is it to feel used? Is it to feel valued? Are we just
I
chasing
can't,
happiness?
I sadly can't give you the answer because it's only the first episode, but like, I do know the answer to that question. What is the point of humanity?
Well,
Aristotle.
we should have an episode on it. That's what I'm
I
saying.
do. That's why I'm so down.
Because that would be like, yeah, what is it? And then how can we chase that? And then my question to you, Alex, would be like, does the potential upside of AI present the possibility of us getting closer to that faster?
See, here's the thing, dude, and this is why I'm so like, this is really why I'm so worked up about all of this.
Yeah.
In philosophy, we often talk about a sphere of rational individuals. And when you're talking about that, you're just talking about a group of people who share a, I don't know, similar worldview, understand similar objective validity. They're not the people who are using AI. And when we talked before about the sales pitch versus the reality of it, we what we need right now is we need these companies going to research centers saying, hi, here's free compute for the rest of your life. Do what you need to do. And pulling all of the bullshit like, you've been at this for 6 hours. Should you go take a water break? I don't need we need actual scientific models being deployed for free, gratis, to scientific institutions that could be using them because when I was in physics recently, for a WKV approximation, you plug in some numbers, you run a couple symptoms, you run some models, see if something happens. AI is infinitely better at data collection and analysis. We know that, right? I mean, I could do that trillions of times in the time it would take me to do that a couple of years ago, but that's not what it's being used for. It's being used in my QuickBooks to make it really hard to send invoices to customers. And it's being used in Gmail to make it so I can send bills from my calendar. And this, I think, all goes back to the first conversation, which we will really want to flesh out, which is what is it doing versus what are we told it can do versus X, Y, and Z. Because I think if we get rid of all the sales pitch shit, If we get
Yeah.
rid of all the, look, I put AI in your software so it can make cute content clips for you. AI isn't to spoil a bunch of it very bluntly. To me, currently, right now, AI is incredible at the things that are purely, as you were talking about earlier, input output driven. If you need data resolved, if you need data analyzed, studied, AI is incredible at it. It's better than most humans at this point. You want code written, go have Claude do it. But that's where I'm starting to feel some limiting factors.
Okay.
When it comes to the actual creation or ideation of things, I almost always work with another human being. And
So go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No,
So,
no.
so I think that AI has a tremendous place in terms of actually advancing the scientific and social kind of quest for objective truth. I think the problem is, in order to get to that, we have to first strip away the reality of what it is not.
Yeah. Yep.
Then we have to understand it as essentially the statistical analytics tool that it is, and lean more into that side of it rather than the consumer facing, let me automate your daily life. Because, and I'm writing a paper about this right now. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in the treatise on the origin of inequality, talks a lot about the birth of leisure time. Humans coming out of a state of nature and suddenly having the time to have leisure. And there's so many intersectional points here, but what do we do with this time we get? Let's say it used to take someone a full day to do something, and now they can do it in 5 seconds. They press a button, it's done. Okay, cool. Then what are you doing for the rest of the day? Is the idea then that I can do 40 projects in that day, or is the idea that I can do my one project and go spend the rest of the day writing poetry and going fishing? But I think that until AI, to put it as succinctly or as easily as I can, I think until AI is understood for what it is, we're just going to be dealing with a whole bunch of marketing bullshit. And it's going to detract and take away from the potential for these tools to be doing great. Listen, there's a reason I'm downloading open models and writing handlers for them, right? Because I'm like, I don't want you to tell me when to do anything. I want you to do what I'm telling you to. But how many researchers in a large scale capacity are doing that? I mean, it might be a lot more than I think, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
Part of the problem too is, so yeah, you want to use it to find objective truth. Is that shared amongst the majority of society? Do people want objective truth, or do they want subjective responses that feel good? And if we live in a democratic society where the majority kind of, and a lot of times will win out, then there might be more of an incentive to cater to that as opposed to what you want.
And
And
I
is
think
that
that's exactly why we have the problem with the current models we do, which treat every human being like they're a god. They treat every idea like it's the best idea they've ever heard. There is no, when you have a conversation with a scholar in a field and you say something dumb, they tell you said something dumb. And that's why when I was in grad school, it was always you find the person you want to learn from and you go learn, right? I didn't even like seminars in grad school, but sorry,
But even to continue on that point, okay, so a scholar will directly tell you're dumb, but also you can make the argument that scholars don't necessarily, they're not necessarily the movers and shakers of the world. That's more so the politicians and the businessmen. And the politicians and the businessmen are more likely to do what the AI tools are doing currently, which is to tell you what you want to hear, so you like them more, so you vote for them, or so you sign a bill that
and
benefits them.
this is all creates the problem you asked me about initially, which is, do we think we can use AI for objective truth, for scientific gain, for genuine humanity, like for good things? 100%. But not yet. We're
Not
not
yet.
we're not even close, in my opinion, because of exactly what you were just talking about. We're dealing with models that are written for sales. They're written for general purpose society. And there's an analogy I often make when it comes to the larger enterprise models and when I taught a class. Like when you teach a class full of students, you can't teach to the 3 or 4 students that like want to learn as hard as possible. You have to teach the lowest common denominator, right? You have to
Yeah.
find that nice middle ground, and that's where you teach. And that's what models are doing.
I think we're going to be able to get to the point because I don't think that analogy holds with models. I think it might now, but I think as things advance, we're going to see a lot of different models spring off. And just like Claude will talk to each person the way they want to be talked to, I think there will be models that exist that will be the exact model that every person wants. I think we'll have an infinite sample space of models and you can just go in and pick your favorite one. So maybe, so I think we're done with SaaS has the same problem. Salesforce, for example, you build a software that doesn't work great for anyone, but is good enough for everyone. With AI is going to write code. So every piece of software is going to be super tailored towards what each individual person or enterprise wants. And similarly, I think models are likely going to go, assuming no intervention or government intervention or anything like that. I think I could see a world like that. So you'll get what you want because there's no common denominator. I think the concept of appealing to the common denominator is going to go away in kind of the technological realm, but it'll still
I
exist.
hope so,
I
because
think it will.
it feels, at least in my personal experience, like the enterprise models are slowly getting worse and worse in terms of their responses, in terms of the very things we were just discussing. They're losing any modicum of objectivity. They're not pushing back on things that are incorrect. They're just like, yeah, that's totally, man. The earth is 100% flat. Yeah, there's two R's in strawberry. And these just weird things that, yeah, listen, I agree with you 100%. The fact that in the new, what was it, the new Android update, I think Google just did it at their, you can literally go in and just be like, hi, I need an app that does this.
Yeah.
That is incredible. If it works,
Yeah.
we'll see. But if that works, that is insane. And I think that, I guess that, I think, I think that there's kind of two directions there. I think it depends who wins this kind of struggle right now.
I
If
agree. I agree.
if businesses and politicians win it, then I think AI continues to live in kind of a muddled environment with researchers on the side working on very small scale, agile, edge AI kind of ways to handle certain things. But I think that if I think that if we can shift some kind of profit modality here into actual research and truth, as you and I have talked about, then we have a chance for at least one of these companies to be like, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe we should put out a model that is. Nematron was a cool. I've been having a lot of fun with that recently. NVIDIA's
Yeah.
new model, but it's got the same problems as all the rest.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, because they're actually not. Now, I'm being optimistic when I say that there'd be like a whole slew of models because there's a very real risk that a closed source for-profit company wins, and then their incentives is purely to make shareholders more money. And then there's also the potential that it could become one of the biggest monopolies that the world has ever seen. So that's definitely a risk. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, I'd probably really we should be rooting for open source models. And so I guess
Absolutely.
because then anyone can go and audit and see. And so open source has always historically kind of had an edge over closed source just because the general community of developers is so strong that they'll come in and you can't really compete with it. I hope with AI, open source has a chance too and can
I do
win.
too. I
And I
really do. And then you have this shit happening with GitHub where they're like, by the way, we signed up all your code repos to train Copilot. Guys, can I get a heads up next time? But I think that, yeah, I think that it really depends on who. Maybe this is actually something cool to talk about because I think the social trend of interest, in terms of how you said before, a lot of people are pretty anti AI. If
yeah,
people remain anti AI, then where does the kind of saleable interest go? It has to go somewhere, right? There's too much infrastructure invested in already.
enterprise doesn't care about that.
It goes into enterprise, and then the question is, does that help it enter research or keep it out?
I think it helps it under research because there'll be more money invested into the infrastructure, and research is going to be the beneficiary of it. Because effective researchers, should always be seeking to use the best tools at their disposal to advance
Yeah.
whatever they're researching. So I think they'll be a good kind of beneficiary of that build out. But I think for
What
any
I'm,
big, there's always has to be a main economic driver.
of
Research for
course,
research's sake has never been. And honestly, the military a lot of times is a big reason for driving research. There
and
always
the
needs
reason I'm not in physics anymore.
yeah. There always needs to be a driver. Research for research's sake never doesn't, as they say, pay the bills.
And I think I told you that I'm working on this nonprofit right now, and I'm trying in 2 years to essentially self fund a think tank for that. I want to start doing, I've been working with students for the last 20 years. I've been pretty hands on with all of this, and I'd like to start doing some actual qualitative and quantitative research in terms of what we're seeing. Because again, this is definitely an episode for a full conversation, and this, or a conversation for a full episode. But I think that a lot of what we're seeing right now in terms of AI sale, particularly in the ed tech space, is something that we see all too often in any industry, is that rather than approach the problem systemically, let's just sell quick, expensive solutions so your kid can pass a test. And I think we're entering a dangerous place in education in particular, because going back to that original point, if understanding is no longer taught and it's output and efficiency over and against, then then to me, it becomes a metaphysical question of what's the point of being a human anymore?
Yeah. I think that's going to be a fascinating conversation to have.
Yeah.
Because what is the point, right? And you could even make the argument that the whole point that countries educated their people was because they would eventually grow up and be able to contribute to the economy in some way, which could lead to a bigger military, which could lead to the country being more successful. You could make that was all in the name of output and value.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that might change.
What a weird time to be alive.
And we need to answer those questions, right?
And I'm happy you said that, Les, because the big thing is that no one is doing. I think one of the other big reasons I wanted to sit down and start doing this is because no one else is. There's always an angle, right? Every single person doing this right now is trying to sell you a product, is trying to sell you some SaaS bullshit, is trying to integrate something into something. I believe that fundamentally you and I just want to figure out what kind of oversight has to be going on here, how we need to reframe the understanding of our relationship, both individually and socially, with artificial intelligence. And as a result of those conversations, have the most important one, which is, okay, so now that we objectively understand where AI is and what it's doing and how it's being integrated, what are the odds that something good happens? And what are the odds that we need more people fighting the good fight to make sure that something good happens?
Exactly. How can we tweak the odds? How can we do certain things that can make the odds more favorable for a good outcome? Things like
Exactly.
that. Yeah. So we don't have, yeah, I guess we don't necessarily have a sales angle, which is what most of the dialogue is around this right now, but we do have a general human advancement angle. I think we both want to see kind of humanity advance in a positive direction, which is it's good for us individually. It's good for the human race and all those things. So I guess that's what we're ultimately seeking.
Yeah. In a very sincere way as well. I was not a professor of philosophy for the money. I can tell you that right now. But everything needs to be brought into an open room where there's no bullshit. There's no one behind the glass trying to gather data on you. There's no ulterior motive. It's just people who are like, listen, the world has infinite technology and infinite resources, and it's not in the best place it could be. How do we maybe change that a little bit? Because we have everything we need, right? And ostensibly AI should be making all of this better for all of us. And I think that one of the reasons I do what I do for a living is to try to keep putting the best people in the best places to make decisions like this. But yeah, as you mentioned, revenue is one hell of a drug. And it's hard to dissuade people from being like, how about you make a little less money so we can change the world?
Yeah, and I guess we haven't even been put to the test. If this blows up and people approach us, we'll see if we actually remain true to what we've said in episode 0. So I guess we have
Dude, this can be our
this is our life.
This is the respect chat.
If we ever sell out, guys, definitely spam us with video clips of us.
Hey guys, remember this time where you were like, we'll never be that? Yeah. Dude, imagine a call from NVIDIA. So we saw your podcast. How would you guys like a full rack of DGX Sparks each to what now?
I'd have to send a clip of it. We will not accept any outside.
I don't know, man. I'm really excited. I think that education, car makers, policy, it's nothing that this isn't touching in a massively deep and fundamental place.
I agree. I'm super excited too. Let's build out kind of what should we do for our first episode 1. Let's maybe spend a couple minutes just defining the episode and the key hitting points. And then I think we'll be good for episode 0 and we'll start that discussion next week.
Personally, I think what I'd like to do is, okay, this is what a transformer model is and how it works. I don't know, because I want to do this conversation about what AI is versus isn't, right? Kind of differentiating between the objective versus the sales pitch angle.
Yeah.
What's the best way to do that?
I think you're right. I think we have to go into the technical details a bit. I think we should stay kind of high level because I think it could get pretty boring.
Well,
Then we can do is we can. I think we start extrapolating out to what it will become, and maybe we stop right at where the two diverging paths would be, good and bad, and just keep it focused on the technology. So we could do AGI. We could go all the way through AGI if that's possible, what that would look like, and avoid the ramifications. And then we're gonna have 10 different paths and ramifications, and we'll just work those into following episodes.
I,
But I think we do, yeah. So I think we do a little technical analysis, and then because I like the extrapolation piece, extrapolate out to what that would mean, where the upper limit is, all those, and then hit the ramifications in episodes 2 through
do
whatever.
you think there's any credence in terms of, do you think there's any benefit to talking about what I am referring to as the snake oil side of all of this?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think we need to hit on it too hard. I think we can just hit a few points because I think through understanding the technology, those will work themselves out, and it'll be less so like disagreeing with it, more so being like, this is obviously not
Right.
what we just discussed.
Okay, cool. And then, yeah, ideally, what I'd love to do within that episode is attempt to try to resolve this, like I keep referring to it as this binary yes and no versus AI, right? And attempt to be like, there are conversations that can be had about this where it's just not two people screaming at each other, right? Because as I think just to mention this, I told you this before, but I think it might be interesting for the podcast, is that I have a colleague, one of my best friends for my whole life, who has, as I mentioned, he owns a business quite successfully. And he went into a Facebook group recently just asking about how people were using AI for scheduling and routing. And 95% of the comments were like very hurtful and hateful. Not just, oh, I don't use it because, but genuinely, you're a bad person. Do not use this. You're the reason the world is falling apart. And it's so naive and it's so hurtful. And the moment, and whole waxing eloquence on this, but the moment you have people that can't talk to each other, what are we doing?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it,
It's an understandable response if there's fear of what this technology will bring, then
but I
people.
also think that your fears have to be founded in something. Your fear can't be founded in reading a LinkedIn post and being like, oh, this is true. And that's what it all feels like right now. Someone reads an article about PDOOM and AGI, boom, that's it. That
Yeah.
5% possibility they read about is now all they stand behind.
Yeah, they shouldn't be necessarily founded on that, but that's what a lot of people do found them on, and that's not going to change.
Maybe it can, though.
Yeah,
Maybe it can. I know I'm the eternal idealist, but maybe it genuine. Education is a really insanely
yeah,
powerful thing.
yeah,
And there's a reason I've dedicated my life to academia, and there's a reason I remain indebted to it and within it. And I think that this is our last chance, which is another reason, maybe not the happiest thing to end our episode on, but I genuinely feel like this is a really important moment in human history where we need to be defining globally what is important to us and what is not.
yeah.
And if the general population, who I believe just wants to be able to spend time with their family, go to work, buy some nice things every so often, if that gets taken away, we have problems. Or rather, if that kind of understanding of what people want isn't reconciled with what's being sold as the future, I think we're going to have problems.
I agree. I agree. And I think that's a good succinct way of wrapping up kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So to put a bow on it, we have 15 episodes planned out. We're going to go through the transcript and
Yeah.
write them out. Our first one is going to be on the sales pitch versus reality, looking at the technology, where it could take us. And again, we're here looking to try to kind of find objective truth and keep an optimistic viewpoint on how this can really lead to a more prosperous world. So we're going to be keeping that viewpoint on things and kind of just looking at it through an objective lens. And every week's going to be definitely a wild ride and a big episode. And I don't know where it's going to take, what avenues we're going to go down. But what I do know is we're going to get one step closer towards understanding, which will bring us one step closer towards the proper implementation of all this. And we're really excited. So episode
Absolutely.
0, the two greatest
Unscripted, by the way.
unscripted. These are the two greatest hot podcast hosts on the planet. Just no one knows it yet.
No, yep, we're getting
Drop
there.
them in, Drop name recommendations down for the podcast in the comments. We'll be reading all of them. I'm sure there's only going to be like one.
That's
And it'll be
fine.
my head.
It's gonna be my mom or something, like, call it Alex and Matt's podcast.
Yeah. And with that, cue the outro music. We'll make that for
This is
episode
the outro music playing right now.